Now am I live? Maybe, because now it says that I've been live for 7 seconds. Is the
7 seconds. Is
7
the seconds.
Okay.
7 seconds.
Okay.
7 seconds.
Well,
Okay. 7 seconds.
I mean,
Well,
what's weird about that
I mean, what's weird about that? I mean, what's
is
weird
that
about
I've
that
closed all of the YouTube windows.
closed all of the YouTube windows. Closed all of the YouTube windows. Closed all of the YouTube windows. Closed.
Okay. Well, that was fun. That was not fun, and I apologize. Hopefully it's over. That was not the way I wanted the live show to start. Hi. Thank you for the lovely greeting. I said thank you for the lovely greeting the first time I started the live show, but I guess it didn't want me to start then. It just didn't feel right. And we lost like 200 viewers. And who can blame them? Yeah, sorry. So this is, I think, going to be a shorter live stream. I'm going to answer some questions. I'm going to read you a little bit. I might try to read this thing that I haven't, that I just worked on a little bit. From Juniper's perspective, you know, I mean, well, I don't know. I'll give it a try. I'll read a little bit and then we'll probably move on. But it's just me trying to like get into her voice a little bit. And then maybe I'll read something from the Anthropocene Reviewed and answer some questions. And I'm sorry to the 100 people who had to log off because of that very, very loud, very unpleasant noise. I don't blame you. It was also unpleasant and stressful for me. And I don't need any new stresses today. I hope everybody's having a good Pizzamas, or as good a Pizzamas as can be expected under the circumstances. We are thrilled with how it's going so far, and really grateful to everybody who's been enthusiastic and part of it with us. It's been a very stressful week here, not because of Pizzamas, or at least not primarily because of Pizzamas, but just because of the COVID and dealing with the challenges of educating kids in a time of COVID. And yeah, so it's been nice to have Pizzamas as a break from the all of the worries that are flowing around the state of Indiana right now, and I know lots of other places as well. But yeah, here we've just had a really bad COVID week, and we don't know yet if that's the start of a if it's the start of potentially some seasonality to the virus, which would be pretty catastrophic. So yeah, just stressful. I know a lot of y'all are stressed too, but hopefully this can be a little bit of a respite from it. And thank you for solving the clue. And thanks to everybody who came back after the horrible noise from before. Yeah. So okay, I'm gonna try to read this. Like, I literally have never read it out loud, so I don't know. But this is my attempt to like. I think this takes place like if you've listened to any of this story, it's about two kids who are in a movie, and this takes place like 3 days later after the two kids have been in they've like tested for a film together. And now they've flown back to their respective homes, Kai to New York, where he has an apartment and sort of lives, and Juniper to where she lives, which is in Kansas. Nothing quite like the flat, unbroken misery of a grocery store parking lot, and nobody quite like my brother wearing a jean jacket and a hat advertising some kind of agricultural product, leaning against the rear of a 1994 Ford Thunderbird, mud-caked sneakers because he says boots are pretentious until it gets below freezing. Nowhere quite like home. I come out of the grocery store carrying a case of Miller Ultra, and he looks for all the world like a picture, like a Diane Arbus photograph. His eyes convey recognition when he sees me without anything else in him moving. He'd make a great actor if he knew what he was doing, but he doesn't. I remember at a class once some kid said that he was an empty vessel waiting to be filled up by the character and that he must be entirely drained before a scene begins. But I'm an overfull vessel, spilling myself out every which way, tipping this way and that, leaving stains of myself on everything I bump into. And if I'm any good at acting, it's only because each take drains a little bit away from me, leaves me feeling less overwhelmed by myself, which is among the many reasons I don't want to be here. Wind whipping across my face like it blew all the way from Omaha with nothing to slow it down, which I suppose it did. Case of beer and my second favorite sister, Owen says. If this ain't living, I don't know what is. We drive to a bridge on the over the Wabash River. Probably not. Probably a different river. Used to be a railroad bridge. Now it's just a safety hazard. I don't know how to explain going home except to say that there's so much pain everywhere I can barely breathe. Feels like you did something terrible and you're about to get caught. Feels like knowing you have to break up with someone, but not knowing how to. How's it feel to be home? Owen asks. Good, I say. What's new with you? Kicking ass and taking names, Owen says. He's 17. I thought a lot about him while making Pro Patria Mori, the way he's scared, the way when he's scared his shoulders slouch but his voice doesn't, the way he avoids any sincerity while still somehow being the most emotionally sensitive creature in the history of our planet, the way feeling invades him from the skin and then penetrates all the way in, the extremity of emotion being so unbearable that you try to shut it out with the blackout curtains of cynicism and irony. I've missed you, I said. Yeah, he answers. And then after a second, how's the movie? I don't know, I say. You have to tell me after the premiere. I'm not getting a suit, he says. Just dress like yourself, I tell him. Everyone will think you're so authentic. I fucking am so authentic, he says. I'm not convinced that sentence required an F bomb, I tell him. She's not just my second favorite sister, he mumbles as if to himself. She's also my second favorite mother. I laugh, and he drives on in silence, except for the music shivering out of the long-blown speakers of the Thunderbird. I would give almost all my worldly possessions to be able to stop thinking about that hideous MIA song playing over what should be a quiet and powerful moment in Pro Patria Mori, but I've never been able to exorcise thoughts from my head. I keep imagining people laughing, or the review in the Times criticizing the tone, or how big all my choices are, as if they really were my choices, when in fact they were Catherine's who forced me into caricature by choosing takes seemingly based entirely on how wide my eyes were. Could have been such a good film where everything that happens in Keanu's eyes, but you tried to make it big and glossy and slick. Difference between Jane Austen and Danielle Steele isn't so much what happens, but whether a goddamn MIA song is pounding away in the background, instructing you precisely in what to feel. But what do I know? I'm just an actor. The bridge was a little shittier than when I last visited, maybe a year ago. Owen and I sat next to each other, feet dangling over the edge, looking down at the Elkhorn River. That's better, which isn't fast or dramatic or anything, but it is ours, our little river, the one our town slides down into. Owen made his way through the beer awfully quick. When we were little, we'd played a game called Pooh Sticks on this bridge with our mom. The three of us would toss a twig into the river, and then we'd run to the other side of the bridge to see whose twig came out first, and we all claimed the winning stick was definitely ours, and Owen would take it too seriously and start crying, and then we'd all agree that Owen's stick had definitely won. The costume designer on Pro Patria Mori told me once that a famous movie star who has won a lot of Oscars and is widely seen as America's dad needs to do at least 2 movies a year, not for money or to feed his ego, but because he needs other people to make his choices for him, not only telling him what to wear every day, but also where to stand and what to say and when to wake up and when to go to bed and what to have for lunch and dinner. And that's what I need, basically. I need a fucking break from myself. Being in New York makes me want to spend the whole day walking, but not alone. Well, now that doesn't make any sense because now we're in New York. Let me see if any of this is good. No. No, I think that's it. Everything else is everything else is got to be worked in, I think. So that's just a little bit of like what Juniper sounded like to me. Um, or what I was thinking Juniper might sound like if I write from her perspective, which I don't know if I will. Yeah. So I mean, the rest of it is like in New York, and I don't really want to write her in New York. I don't think. Well, I don't know. Who knows? But I think we want to see her in like a place that feels like not like the Juniper that we thought we knew, and then we see a little bit of like the distance between the way Kai thinks of her and the way she thinks of herself. If I've learned anything from the response to my work, it's that you really gotta make it clear that the narrator's perspective is not necessarily the author's perspective. Yeah, so I don't know. I like the rhythm of the way that she thinks, and I like how it bounces around, but I think it might be a little too jarring too. So I don't know. Uh, I don't know. By the way, I don't think MIA is quite the right person for this. Because I like MIA too much. But yeah, so I think it's going to be someone else, but like it's not Smash Mouth. I mean, Smash Mouth is two. That's like two on the nose, somewhere in the middle between, like somewhere between like Flaming Lips and Smash Mouth. I think is the right call. Uh, Maybe U2, somewhere something in the category of U2, right? Where it's like a band that we all I mean, U2 is interesting because they make very like emotionally charged music. They make music that is like designed to make you feel and make you feel deeply. So anyway, thank you for all your suggestions. Nickelback is too good. The Cure is too close to me. I feel like in real life, like if you heard a Cure song, like if you're picturing this movie and you heard like Friday I'm in Love, well, actually maybe Friday I'm in Love works. It's a great song. Yeah, I don't know. There's a wonderful Mountain Goat song off their album called Goths, which is about goths and which spoke very deeply to me as a because I fancied myself very goth when I was in ninth grade, and I wore makeup and I wore a trench coat in Orlando and everything. And anyway, in that song, John Darnielle sings, Robert Smith is secure in his villa in France. And I just love that. I love that line that like, even, the Cure haven't been famous in a long time, but like Robert Smith's presumably doing fine. I wonder, I also, maybe I should pick a fictional band, because like the thing is, any real band you pick, there's a chance that they're going to do something like stupid or problematic. Like I remember when Hank and I can finally talk about the Smash Mouth thing. So like so the whole idea, I made that video, Hey Now, and then, and then I called Hank and I was like, all these people in comments are saying we should title all of our videos, for quarantine after all-star titles. This was back when you still thought that like, it would be over one way or another in a fairly set period of time. And Hank was like, I can't do that because my next video is about markers, like which marker is the best marker. And I said that to Rosianna. I was like, there's this great idea in comments, but we can't do it because Hank's next video is about markers. And Rosianna was like, you should call it the sharpest tool in the shed. And when she said that, I called Hank and I was like, you got to call it the sharpest tool in the shed. And then we were off and running. But I remember when we were talking about it, like initially, first off, it was so exciting. Like anytime you have an idea that turns out to be terrible, it always feels exciting at the beginning. And I was like, this is going to be the thing that like gets us through this bad period and everything. And, but I remember very vividly Hank and I talking about it, and Hank being like, what if Smash Mouth does something stupid in the middle? Like, what if Smash Mouth, comes out and in support of some organization that doesn't align with our values. And I was like, Hank, there is no way that Smash Mouth is going to make news in 2020. It is impossible for Smash Mouth to enter the news cycle in the year 2020. I was like, they could murder hundreds of, but then they did. They did. They did penetrate the news cycle, and in a terrible way. And I was like, oh God, do we have to stop our ridiculous, stupid thing because Smash Mouth performed a freaking concert at Sturgis, South Dakota that eventually 65,000 COVID cases were linked to? Smash Mouth, God. Smash Mouth. Yeah, so there was a lot of naivete going into the Smash Mouth thing. So I think if I pick Smash Mouth, it might be a little too on the nose. Although it all becomes much funnier if it's Smash Mouth, because then you're clearly on Juniper's side from the very beginning, right? Like, you can't have like walking. You can't have Smash Mouth's second biggest song be the emotional crescendo of your film. Yeah. So anyway, I'm glad that the Smash Mouth thing is over. It's been very nice to title my own videos. I've also been reminded that I am, like, not to brag, better at titling my videos than Smash Mouth is. Like, I'm just better at it. I think I've already proven that. I think today's title was a significant improvement over How About Yours? That said, like, we were astonished. I mean, Hank talked about this, but we were completely astonished by the fact that the videos didn't do poorly. That like our audience remained very stable throughout that process, and we were kind of thinking it as a way to like, I talked about this a little today, like strengthen the core of Nerdfighteria and hopefully like help people build connections. Make it more of a space for that kind of thing. But what actually happened surprised us, which was like, people were like, this is a great idea. I don't know if y'all thought it was a great idea, but you indulged the heck out of us, which we appreciated. And also, I do think it provided a nice kind of like organizing principle to a very difficult 5 months. I don't know that the next 5 months are going to be any less difficult, but what are you going to do? I'm going to read an Anthropocene reviewed thing, and then I'll read some of your questions. I really thought that there was significantly more to that Juniper bit, but I didn't dislike it. It was maybe a little like Western, self-consciously Westerny. I don't think I like this introduction, and I think I'm going to cut it and replace it with stuff from the oh, by the way, I will read your comments later. I can't read them right now because they come in very fast. But when I read them later, if you have any ideas for vlog, like for example, I'll read the Sunsets one as a way of exploring what I'm talking about. No, I'll read the Capacity for Wonder one because that's a better exploration of what I'm talking about. So, like, there was a Vlogbrothers video a long time ago where I reviewed man's capacity for wonder. And then I adapted that. And there was also one where I talked about there are a couple where I talk about sunsets. And then I adapted those videos into an episode of the Anthropocene Reviewed that turned out to be like one of the most, one of the ones that people responded to the most, and that I heard from people the most about. And but like, they were both inspired by kind of expansions of Vlogbrothers videos. And in thinking about what I would like to do for the book, I'm wondering if there are other examples where I could do something like that, where there's a Vlogbrothers video or a couple of Vlogbrothers videos that I could expand in some way into a review for the book. Like, I may do Wintry Mix, which I made a video about, and then I made another video about the relationship between weather and people, and how my understanding of the relationship between weather and people has changed in the age of COVID, because I suddenly realized that weather, the relationship between weather and human life is not merely metaphorical, as I always kind of thought it was, because that's how insulated I have been from nature, and how unaware I have been that I am nature, and I am indistinguishable from it. I am a product of sunlight, just like everything else on Earth. So yeah, if there are Vlogbrothers videos from the past that you liked, or that you would like to see expanded into this, let me know in comments. So this is the review of Our Capacity for Wonder. I think it's slightly expanded from the show, but not extensively expanded. I may expand it more, having now read a biography of F. Scott Fitzgerald, but I don't know how much more, because I don't really know if I want to make it about Fitzgerald. I think that the story of Gatsby is pretty tight and interesting, and of course Our Capacity for Wonder, is interesting to me. Yeah. Okay, here we go. This is a review of humanity's capacity for wonder. Toward the end of F. Scott Fitzgerald's novel, The Great Gatsby, the narrator is sprawled out on a beach at night when he begins thinking about the moment Dutch sailors first saw what is now called New York. Fitzgerald writes, "For a transitory, enchanted moment, man must have held his breath in the presence of this continent, compelled into an aesthetic contemplation he neither understood nor desired, face to face for the last time in history with something commensurate to his capacity for wonder." It's a hell of a sentence. A lot changed in Gatsby between the first manuscript and the finished book. In 1924, Fitzgerald's publisher actually had galleys printed of the novel, then called Trimalchio, before Fitzgerald extensively revised them and changed the title to The Great Gatsby. But in all of the editing and cutting and rearranging, that particular sentence never changed. Well, except that one time Fitzgerald misspelled the word aesthetic, but who hasn't? Gatsby took a circuitous route on its way to being one of the great American novels. The initial reviews of the book weren't excellent. Weren't great. How do you say great American novel? I like the phrase weren't great. I've always liked that. I don't know why. I think I said on Monday that my mustache was not great, because I like there's something about that phrase that I like. But you can't say the great American novel and the initial reviews weren't great. Whatever, I'll just bold it and worry about it later. And the book was widely considered to be inferior to Fitzgerald's first novel, This Side of Paradise. In the New York Herald, Isabel Patterson wrote that Gatsby was, quote, a book for the season only. H.L. Mencken called it obviously unimportant. The Dallas Morning News was especially brutal, writing, "One finishes The Great Gatsby with a feeling of regret, not for the fate of the people in the book, but for Mr. Fitzgerald. When This Side of Paradise was published, Mr. Fitzgerald was hailed as a young man of promise, but the promise, like so many, seems likely to go unfulfilled." Yikes. The novel sold modestly, not nearly as well as either of his previous books, and by the time Fitzgerald died in 1940 at the age of 44, Gatsby was largely forgotten. A few years earlier, Fitzgerald wanted to buy a copy of the book for his mistress, Sheila Graham. He visited a few bookstores, but none carried Gatsby, or for that matter, any of his books. But then, beginning in 1942, the U.S. Council on Books in Wartime started sending books to American troops fighting in World War II. Over 150,000 copies of the Armed Services edition of Gatsby were shipped overseas, and the book became a hit at last. Armed Services editions, or ASEs, were paperback books that fit into a soldier's pocket. They popularized several books now considered classics, including Betty Smith's A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. The Council on Books in Wartime's slogan was, "Books are weapons in the war of ideas," which was the kind of slogan generals could get behind, even if many of the books chosen, including Gatsby, were not particularly patriotic. One soldier told the New York Times that the books were as popular as pinup girls, which is precisely the sort of thing one would say to the New York Times, regardless of its accuracy. But the ASEs were very widely read, and they helped popularize paperback books in the United States. By 1960, Gatsby was selling 50,000 copies a year. These days, it sells over 500,000 copies a year, not least because it's difficult to escape high school English in the US without being assigned the book. It's short, reasonably accessible, and a genuine masterpiece. Also, rather than being a book for one season only, it has proven to be a book for all seasons. Gatsby is a critique of the American dream. The only people who end up rich or successful in the novel are the ones who started out that way. Almost everyone else ends up dead or destitute. And it's a critique of the kind of vapid capitalism that can't find anything more interesting to do with money than to try to make more of it. The book lays bare the carelessness of the entitled rich, the kind of people who buy puppies but won't take care of dogs, or who purchase vast libraries of books but never read any of them. And yet, Gatsby is often read as a celebration of the horrifying debauchery of the Anthropocene's richer realms. Shortly after the book came out, Fitzgerald wrote a friend, "Of all the reviews, even the most enthusiastic, not one had the slightest idea what the book was about." And sometimes that still feels true. Like once, to tell a horrifying story of my own debauchery, I was staying at the Plaza Hotel in New York City and received a free upgrade to the Great Gatsby suite. The room was an explosion of silver and gold, from the sparkling silver wallpaper to the ornate 1920s furniture and the odd trophies and framed photographs lining the mantel. The whole thing was a study in visual overstimulation. Eventually, in what may have been the most entitled moment of my life, I called and requested a room change because the ceaseless tinkling of the Great Gatsby suite's massive crystal chandelier was disturbing my sleep. As I made that call, I could feel the eyes of Fitzgerald staring down on me in watchful vigil. But Gatsby lends itself to the confusion that Fitzgerald lamented. Yes, it's unwavering in its condemnation of American excess, but even so, the whole novel pulses with an intoxicatingly rhythmic prose. I mean, just listen to the first sentence. "In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since." You can damn near tap your foot to it. Or take this one. "Gatsby turned out all right in the end. It was what preyed on Gatsby, what foul dust floated in the wake of his dreams that temporarily closed out my interest in the abortive sorrows and short-winded elations of men." When words roll like that, it's hard not to enjoy the party. And for me, that's the real genius of Gatsby. The book makes you feel for the entitled, spoiled, disgusting rich and the poor people living in the Valley of Ashes, and everyone in between. You know the parties are vapid, and maybe that's too many vapids. Or is it? Did I just think it is? I guess it isn't. You know the parties are vapid and maybe even evil, but you still want to get invited. And so in bad times, Gatsby feels like a condemnation of the American idea, and in good times, it feels like a celebration of that same idea. David Denby has written that the book has become a kind of national scripture, recited happily or mournfully as the occasion requires. And so it is with that line at the end. "For a transitory, enchanted moment, man must have held his breath in the presence of this continent, compelled into an aesthetic contemplation he neither understood nor desired, face to face for the last time in history with something commensurate to his capacity for wonder." It's easy to take the line at face value, and maybe it was meant that way. But then here we are at the end of a novel in which everyone is trying to get back to a past that never really existed. And now our narrator is trying to get back to a past that never really existed. I mean, the line feels wrong in ways it maybe didn't in 1925. Most glaringly, there's the false notion that America was somehow empty or pristine before Europeans arrived. But maybe the novel knows this, even if Fitzgerald didn't. Maybe the novel knows that any attempt to harken back to a golden age is always doomed, and yet we go on harkening anyway. Of course, the best observations in literature are at once beautiful and accurate. Ships at a distance have every man's wish on board, Zora Neale Hurston wrote. But even when a great line doesn't prove to be a great truth, considering why it's not true can maybe point towards something important. It turned out, of course, that the sight of New York to European eyes was not the last time in history humans would come face to face with something commensurate to their capacity for wonder. Within a few decades of The Great Gatsby, humans would step foot on the moon. We'd glimpse what the universe looked like just after the Big Bang by gazing upon light that is billions of years old. But also, we are never far from wonders. Like, I remember when my son was about 2, we were walking in the woods one November morning. We were along a ridge, looking down at a forest in the valley below, where a cold haze seemed to hug the forest floor. I kept trying to get my oblivious 2-year-old to appreciate the landscape. At one point, I picked him up and pointed out toward the horizon and said, "Look at that, Henry, just look at it." And he said, "Weef." I said, "What?" And again, he said, "Weef." And then he reached out and grabbed a single brown oak leaf from the little tree next to us. I wanted to explain to him that you can see a brown oak leaf literally anywhere in the eastern United States in November, that nothing in the forest was less interesting. But after watching him look at it, I began to look as well, and I soon realized it wasn't just a brown leaf. Its veins spidered out red and yellow and orange in a pattern too complex for my brain to synthesize. And the more I looked at that leaf with Henry, the more I knew I was face to face with something commensurate to my capacity for wonder. Marveling at the perfection of that leaf, I was reminded that aesthetic beauty is as much about how and whether you look as what you see. From the quark to the supernova, the wonders do not cease. It is our attentiveness that is in short supply, our ability and willingness to do the work that awe requires. Still, I'm quite fond of our capacity for wonder. I give it 4 stars. Yeah. So that's that. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I can see a couple places where I could add a sentence or two about Fitzgerald, and I can see a couple places where I can maybe write another sentence or two about maybe pull in something about golden ages, or maybe add a little bit of textual analysis about how fun the book is. But I don't know, that felt a little finished. That felt pretty finished to me. So that's good. I mean, I think that's a positive sign. That means that I'm 1/60th done with the book. Yeah. So anyway, thanks for letting me read that to you. I appreciate it, and it was fun to listen to it. Yeah. Yeah, I am really interested in the way that we harken back to golden ages, or even like when I'm really interested in like the few moments in a human life when you're aware that you're in a golden age of some kind, or that you're in a golden moment. Like, it's really uncommon. Like I knew I was in it. Like I'll give you like a bigger example and a smaller example. And I don't know if I can ever write about this, but it is something I find really interesting. A bigger example is that like when Looking for Alaska was published in 2005, in March of 2005, I knew that I was in a golden age of young adult literature. Like I was aware of the fact that writers like Jacqueline Woodson and Walter Dean Myers, and Laurie Haltz Anderson and Marcus Zuzak were just tremendously expanding our understanding of what YA literature could do, and like making it vastly more ambitious. Like if you read a book like The Astonishing Life of Octavian Nothing, Traitor to the Nation by M.T. Anderson, like that's a big, or The Book Thief. Those are big, ambitious books. Monster by Walter Dean Myers, or if you read If You Come Softly by Jacqueline Woods, like those are big, ambitious, really major, not like major soup, incredibly good novels. And that was part of what was so exciting to me about wanting to write for that audience, was wanting, like really admiring those people as colleagues. That said, like, it's easy to like look back on those few years and say like, oh, that was a golden age of YA literature. But then if I look forward and I see books like Dear Martin by Nick Stone, or The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, I'm like, oh, there's a new golden age. Like, so like you want to, a lot of what happens, I think, is you end up applying your own experiences. There's something about your own lost youth or whatever that goes into like feeding those ideas, and those ideas can become so dangerous. Like that's the weird thing about the like yearning for the golden age, is that idea can become so, it's pleasant and wonderful and lovely until it becomes dangerous. And I mean, it can become dangerous in a small way by like, failing to acknowledge how much YA literature has continued to move forward and become more ambitious, and been able to do lots of things that nobody was doing 15 years ago. But it can also become like dangerous in a much bigger way. I think the golden age thinking of like middle-aged and older people, which is that you can get caught in this, you can become vulnerable to arguments that we need to restore an institution or a nation state or whatever to its previous greatness, to the thing it was when you were young, right? Like, what make America great again really means, because there is no particular time that's hearkening back to, right? Like, if it were and it's telling that phrases like, I mean, like Make America Great Again, you hear this phrase around lots of different things: nation states, institutions, genres of literature, everything. But it's telling to me that they never say like Make America 1982 again. They don't pick a time, right? Because like if you did pick a time, it would become immediately obvious that the golden age was not a golden age. Like say the golden age for the United States was depending on your perspective, say it's 1986, say it's 1994, whenever it was, say it's 1962. In each of those golden ages, those purported golden ages, the homicide rate in the United States was much higher than it is now. Average household income, even after adjusting for inflation, was lower. So people were more likely to die by violence. They were more likely to live in poverty. Now, there are periods in American history that were better than now for many people. And that, like, I don't labor under the delusion that we're living. Oh, sorry. I thought I saw in the background water damage, but it's just a shadow. I don't labor under the delusion that like 2020 is going well, or even that the last like 2 or 3 years of American life have gone well. Like crime is going up. Inequality is really, really high, like hasn't been this high since Fitzgerald was writing about it in, almost 100 years ago. And so it's not that, just to be clear, it's not that things are good. It's that they were always bad. Like there were always, massive injustices in American life. And depending on like where you pick and choose, like that tells you what your golden age is. Really what the golden age a lot of times means, to me anyway, is just like a hearkening back to your particular golden agey time. So yeah, it's really hard to figure out how to, but it's kind of hard to figure out how to talk about this. And maybe I don't know, Maya suggested talking about nostalgia, for instance, which might be a better way into it. Because I don't think nostalgia is all bad, and like I kind of I am interested. Like I mean, maybe I shouldn't write about this just because I've tried to do it in my fiction, but like I've always been interested in when I'm writing stories, and like how do you evoke um a feeling of nostalgia that isn't sentimentalized, or that isn't cheap, because there's something to me magical and true about nostalgia. Like, you know, time is passing. It's a great Robert Penn Warren poem. Let me see if I can find it, which, based on my inability to remember any oh god, I found it. I can never remember, like, this is just a bit of it. Uh I'll read you the whole poem. It's so good. Long ago in Kentucky, I, a boy, stood by a dirt road in first dark and heard the great geese hoot northward. I could not see them, there being no moon and the stars sparse. I heard them. I did not know what was happening in my heart. It was the season before the elderberry blooms, therefore they were going north. The sound was passing northward. Tell me a story. In this century and moment of mania, tell me a story. Make it a story of great distances and starlight. The name of the story will be time, but you must not pronounce its name. Tell me a story of deep delight. And I really like that. I I like that idea of the story. The name of the story will be time, but you must not pronounce its name. Like that is very much what I'm trying to do in my writing. Like that's what I find interesting in writing. So yeah, I find that really beautiful and powerful, and it's sort of a guide to me, I guess. Um, but then, there are little moments in a human life, and I don't know if this is true for y'all, but like for me, there are little moments in my life where Rosianna described this really beautifully, I thought, and then I used it in a Vlogbrothers video and didn't credit her properly. I did credit her, but I should have credited her in the video, not just in like the comments and description. But she said that there are moments in life, like I was trying to write about this, and she said in like a comment on the script that there are moments in life that feel like a memory is presently being formed, and there are little moments for me when um, I was with people and it felt magical and I knew it was magical. Like there are lots of moments where I was with people and it felt magical, but I didn't really understand it until later. There are a few moments where it felt magical and I knew exactly what was happening while it was happening. So like in Turtles All the Way Down, I read about the musician Tom Waits saying that sometimes when you're playing music, it feels that musicians refer to going out into the meadow, which is where you're playing music, and the feeling of playing music is so intense and overwhelming that you don't feel like you're in the concert hall. You don't feel like there's an audience. You don't feel any of that. You just feel like you've gone out into the meadow. And I have a few moments in my life that are like that. Like I remember driving home with my friends when I was a senior in high school from seeing the play Angels in America, which, to four boys in 1994, seeing a play about, mostly about gay men, um, in a theater full of where many people in the audience were gay, was revelatory for us, and asked us, and the play asked us to think about big questions that, I think a couple of us at least had never thought about before. And it led to this really beautiful, wandering, wonderful conversation that, like when you have those moments, you never know if you're the only one having them. But I saw one of the other people in that car not too long ago, and I mentioned that, and they were immediately like, "Oh yeah, that was like one of the best conversations I've ever had in my life," and it really was. But that feeling of like the memory being presently formed is also so powerful that whenever you can like get a hold of it, like to me that is at least like adjacent to nostalgia. So yeah. Emma says the opposite helps me with anxiety. I think, will people remember this moment in a year? That's such a good point. Yeah, sometimes some of this, right, like the vast, almost everything gets forgotten. Well, everything gets forgotten eventually, but like almost everything gets forgotten immediately. You know, like the things that mortify me in other people's minds are just in the distant past. You know, the director of player personnel of the New York Knicks who told me not to eat the sandwich I had made for myself from the platter that was for the team. He has forgotten about this moment, but I have not. um, yeah. So yeah, so I'm interested in like, because nostalgia gets a bad rap, and for some good reasons, right? Like it can blind us, it can make us think that like things that are evil are acceptable. Like we're gonna, somehow we will find a way to look back on this period of history as nostalgically, and like when I just I just want to survive to when we do, so that I can be like, nope, no, no, I'm not, I'm not having that. I'm not, I won't go there. I did not enjoy 2020. um, Max says, do you think he has forgotten that? It doesn't seem like something you'd forget. I think thanks, Max. Maybe he hasn't. Yeah, I mean, I think I can already start to see like what we're going to look back on nostalgically about this time, but um, there's like that great Clint Hill Smith poem about how when people say we've made it through worse before, all I can hear is the wind whipping against the headstones of those who did not make it. Like we can't look back on this time as anything other than a catastrophe, and on some level, in the case of many countries, a needless catastrophe. We could have had. Well, I mean, we could have had fewer people die in the United States. I don't think there's any question about that. And so I hope we look back on it as like a real, a shared failure. We've got to learn from it. We've got to move on from it, and take some lessons from it, hopefully. But we'll see. I don't know. Strange days. Emily says, if anyone romanticizes Zoom staff meetings, I'll smack them. Yeah, I do not need to ever be on a Zoom call ever again after this. That is the end of that sentence. I think that I will. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll get used to it. It's incredible what people can get used to, but I did not. I did not. I do not enjoy. I don't really enjoy meetings in real life, let alone on Zoom. So yeah. And Maya says that I quite like Zoom Uni. Well, good news, Maya. There's ample opportunity to take virtual college. So if you like it, you can do it the whole time that way. Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, I didn't know you were live streaming.
That's okay. I'm about to stop.
Okay.
I have to go. Thank you for there's a great moment in the television show 30 Rock where the guy playing the last surviving Habsburg prince has a birthday party, and he says, "Thank you for coming to my birthday." So thank you for coming to my party. That's what I think about every time I want to say like, thank you for coming to my live stream. I think about the last surviving Habsburg saying that. Thank you for coming to my live stream. It has been fun to chat with you. I apologize for the problems at the beginning, and I won't. So next week there will be no live stream. I'm sorry. I'm traveling. going to be away from my computer for 72 hours, but then they will resume the week after that. So thank you all, and the FTBA. Bye.